He thought he brought home a dog, but soon realized he was wrong. Thinking he had brought home a puppy, a young man soon discovered he was mistaken. Many children dream of having a pet, though not all parents agree. Some are given goldfish, rabbits, hamsters, cats, or even dogs. What about you? Were you lucky enough to have a furry or finned companion growing up? This story begins with an 18-year-old who experienced something completely unexpected. Home for the weekend after a week at university, he and his parents quickly noticed the poor condition of the little puppy. It was painfully thin, its thick coat was unkempt, and its eyes had an unusual orange hue. Fortunately, none of this stopped the family from caring for him. The little animal adored the young man who had taken him in and was fiercely devoted to him. However, he remained distant from the rest of the household, an unusual trait for a dog. Typically, when a pet joins a family, it bonds with everyone, but this one shows loyalty to only one person. Unlike most dogs that eagerly share affection, the little puppy refused to be petted by anyone except the teenager who had rescued him. Despite living in the same house, he showed no interest in the rest of the family, focusing all his loyalty on one person. When his owner was away, he grew restless and agitated, and when he returned, the puppy's excitement was overwhelming. While their bond was undeniably strong, its intensity was unusual, and over time, it began to create problems. The family could no longer leave the animal alone in the house because he would start destroying everything if his best friend was not there to take care of him. They thought that he might be happier outside, which is why they let him frolic in their fenced garden during the day until his master returned. Although the solution seemed perfect, it didn't work. The animal, which in the meantime had grown to a large size without realizing its strength, had no respect for the tiny fence in the garden. Letting him play with other dogs, an activity that should have calmed him down and helped him expend some energy until his young master returned home, did not have the expected effect. Able to leap over the fence in one bound, the family was amazed at the puppy's athleticism and were extremely surprised the first time they saw him do this. His incredible strength and agility were part of the reasons the family decided to name the animal Neo, after the main character in the movie The Matrix. Like his movie namesake, Neo seemed to defy limits, displaying incredible agility and independence. The neighbors, however, were less impressed. Worried about their purebred German Shepherd, they asked his owners to keep him contained. Determined, the family built a 3-meter fence, certain it would keep Neo in. But he proved them wrong. Instead of jumping, he chewed through it, escaping once again. Was he the strongest dog ever? The chosen one? Or was there something they hadn't realized? As Neo grew, his behavior became more unusual, protective, untrainable, and immune to all techniques. Yet, blinded by love, his family failed to see the truth. Neo wasn't just any dog. They felt like they were guests in Neo's house now, not the other way around. Something had to change. Neo spent long moments of the day observing what was happening in his surroundings. Although being on the lookout is a normal activity for a dog wanting to protect his family, the way Neo looked at those around him was not normal. While many neighbors and even part of his family began to see him as a nuisance, Neo saw them in exactly the Neo saw things the same way. He only had time for one person, and the rest were either a distraction or a threat. A dog that growls and bares its teeth is certainly scary, but few could produce the same effect as Neo. Indeed, when he growled, other dogs quickly moved away from him. Considering all of this, the family began searching on Google to try and find out what Neo's breed was and if there was any explanation for his strange behavior. With his long ears and a long muzzle, he strongly resembled a German Shepherd. However, he was noticeably taller, and his coat was not as silky, which led the family to believe he must have been a mix of German Shepherd and another breed. The dog breed books they consulted didn't help them, and Google didn't provide satisfactory information either. So they decided that he was probably just a very unusual German Shepherd. They tried again to find different training techniques, but none of the solutions Google offered worked. When you want to train your dog in the best possible way, it is sometimes necessary to call in a professional. This is even more important when it comes to an abandoned dog. A dog that has been mistreated before may be afraid of certain actions or gestures without us even realizing it. However, they would never know if Neo had been mistreated before the young man found him, because the family ultimately decided not to seek professional help. Instead, they continued to try training him themselves. They kept caring for and loving him, even though they had to struggle with his strange personality. When the student was home, Neo was a very nice and pleasant dog, but when he was away, the animal was unbearable. In the meantime, he had escaped from their garden so many times his owners did not know what means to use to stop him. If he wanted to go out, there was nothing they could do to prevent him. Sometimes he was happy to stay in the yard and guard the house, but on other days, his intense need for freedom took over, and he would roam as he pleased. Although he seemed to like the young man, it would have been wrong to describe their relationship as that of a master and his animal. Likewise, he had never considered the family to be his owners and behaved as if the house was his own. No matter what methods they used, they never managed to impose their authority on him. He felt like their equal in the house. One day, while he was alone and very agitated in the garden, Neo decided to pay another visit to the German Shepherd next door. However, his joy would be short-lived because the neighbors were home, and this time, they would not sit idly by. Having had enough of Neo the pest, as they called him, and knowing that bringing him back to their neighbors was useless, they did something completely different. They liked their neighbors, Neo's owners, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they decided to solve the problem for good. So instead of bringing the animal home, they called the Humane Society of Southern Arizona. Neo stayed at the shelter all day until his family came home and was informed by the neighbors of what had happened. Knowing how much Neo had harassed the German Shepherd, his owners were not upset by the actions of their neighbors. They apologized for the problems caused and went to pick up the dog at the shelter. Upset by the actions of their neighbors, they therefore apologized for the problems caused and went to pick up the dog at the shelter. When they arrived at the shelter, the manager reacted in a strange way to their request to see Neo. She looked the family members up and down, trying to answer a question she had asked herself several times that day. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she called the head of the animal control department to ask him to lead them to their pet. At that moment, they noticed that she paused before uttering the word animal. The manager's reaction was strange, and they didn't quite understand why. For a moment, they began to think that Neo had done something irreparable or that there had been a mistake. As the animal control officials steered them through the kennel, the tension was palpable. The family began to worry, fearing the worst for Neo. They just hoped he was healthy. "You realize it's not a dog, it's a wolf," the animal control official stated, leaving the family stunned and speechless. They had no idea. What they once saw as Neo's peculiar traits now made perfect sense. He wasn't just an unusual dog, but a true wolf. The real question now was whether they would be allowed to take him home. However, they already knew the answer before being told. Owning a wolf in California was illegal. The only exceptions were for Native Americans or cases where the wolf was part of a recognized rescue operation. Fortunately, they found an animal center equipped to care for Neo. Though initially restless in his new environment, he soon found his place among a wolf pack. There, he seemed more at ease than ever. If there's one lesson to take from this story, it's to never mistake a wolf for a dog. More importantly, seeking professional help rather than relying solely on internet advice is always the wiser choice. What an incredible story! If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. See you in the next video.